Hi guys, I'm live. How you guys doing? I don't know why YouTube keeps muting my lives. I've had two in a row where I've tried to say stuff on my mind and it's been muted by YouTube. I don't know why. Let's try it again. I'm gonna look for the comments to see if this one's being muted. So I have some things I want to talk about. Just bed rant. Let me think what I was gonna say. I've done good meditations on my guitar technique, you know. I just did some where I visualize my favorite player of a certain technique, and then I get my head around it. And then once I get my head around it, it strengthens it in my nervous system. Eddie Van Halen said that using the pinky of the left hand is a mental thing, meaning it's more mind than it is body. It's more your mind getting into your pinky than it is just how your pinky itself moving. And that's an example of someone thinking that it's about the mind getting your head around something, helping you actually do it physically. Another example is the movie The Hunted with Tommy Lee Jones, where Tommy Lee Jones plays this guy that teaches people how to kill. And when he's teaching them, he says that to kill mentally is the main thing. And once you can do it mentally, doing it physically is not that hard. But an example of about the importance of getting your head around something, you can, and for my own playing, what that amounts to is I visualize like a technique and my favorite player in that technique. For instance, in tapping, my favorite tapper is Steve Vai. I know Eddie invented tapping, and I know that he's a higher ranked guitarist in history than Steve Vai, but Steve Vai was a better tapper to me. So I visualize Steve Vai as a tapper and his tapping technique, and then I get my head around that, but with meditation, and then that helps me when I go to tap. And I did that exact thing a few days ago. I meditated on Steve Vai's tapping technique. Someone said Eddie Van Halen didn't invent tapping. That's good news that I'm not being muted. But no, I mean, he didn't invent it, but he made it a thing. He made it, he made it happen, kind of thing, I mean, Billy Gibbons doing it like this one time, but so fucking what? He's got a beard down to here and he didn't do anything with it. Eddie did, But anyway, and then I visualized my favorite alternate picker, which is Paul Gilbert. I don't talk about him that much. I probably should. Maybe I will. But Paul Gilbert's my favorite picker, alternate picker. And I visualized, this happened like 4 days ago or something. I visualized Paul Gilbert's picking technique. And it took me 3 days to get it all the way into me. It took 3 days for me to really integrate it. It was so deep, such a deep meditation. I kept trying and not reaching it. Finally, on my walk yesterday, I think I finally did. But that helps my own technique, meditate on the way he alternate picked. And that's a good way of getting it into my nervous system. And alternate picking is slightly deeper, I think, than tapping as far as a technique. It was harder for me to get Paul Gilbert's alternate picking technique, for instance, into me than it was Steve Vai's tapping technique, even though both are the best at what they do. And both have similar birthdays to me too. Randy Rhoads, 12/6/56, me 12/6/66, Steve Vai 6/6/60, me 12/6/66, Paul Gilbert 11/6/66, and me 12/6/66. So maybe the universe is trying to tell me something about my connection numerically to those other three guitarists. Randy was more the attitude I want to have. I want to be the badass. But Randy had issues. Randy had something called imposter syndrome. I heard about this. He didn't believe he fit in the rock star realm. He wasn't confident as a rock star. He didn't believe it was his place to be a rock star. And I kind of dig that, actually. It shows humility, it shows uniqueness, and it shows honesty, And if I have some of that, well, maybe I can get some strength from Randy because he had it too. Worse than me, probably. So, and then Steve had the great tapping technique, and Paul Gilbert had the great alternate picking technique, you know. Sure, others were better than them in history. For instance, like I said, Eddie Van Halen was more prolific in history than Steve Vai, and Yngwie Malmsteen's more prolific in history than Paul Gilbert, and Yngwie Malmsteen is an alternate picker too, but I don't really like Yngwie Malmsteen's picking technique that much. It's too sloppy. It's more like I don't want mine to be, you know. If I'm not careful, I do more of an Yngwie type picking than I do a Paul Gilbert picking, and that's why I'm trying to meditate to change that. And I think I'm making progress. I'm not saying perfection, but progress. And my last jam, which called Malicious and Innocence, I every time I do a jam, I try to update my, you know, demonstrate the upgrades in my picking technique and even my tapping technique. I did well, you know, you guys can watch it. I hope you guys liked it. And I'm enjoying my trilogies too. I enjoyed doing the Kiss trilogy. That was really cool. I mean, Kiss aren't a shredding band, you know, but they have attitude. They're badass. They're rock and roll. You know, such a cool band they were. You know, let's put the X in sex. Looks like a muscle and you make me want to flex. That's so fucking cool, you know. And if all I really cared about was technique, I probably wouldn't be a rocker. I probably would listen to jazz or classical. They have phenomenal technique. They just don't grab me by the gut the way rock and roll does. I love rock and roll first. The shredding is great with rock and roll. It's the whole package deal kind of thing. But rock first, you know, he's got to rock and roll first. It's got to be heavy metal or rock and roll first. And then if you had technique to that, God bless you, whatever God is. But as far as just having technique on a classical piano or classical violin or a saxophone in jazz, I'm just not as interested for some reason. I just don't, the music itself isn't what I like to hear, even though the technique might be awesome. You know, John Coltrane, sax player, maybe Paganini, Niccolo Paganini, a violin player. John Coltrane is jazz, Niccolo Paganini is classical, but if I went to see them, it would be like, yeah, they're awesome, but I don't even know if I would connect to the music is a problem. You know, I don't know if I'd be like rocking out to their stuff because it just isn't my thing. But I can go to see Kiss, which I have never done, but if I did, and they may not even be Niccolo Paganini or John Coltrane technically wise, but I just love their rock and roll. I just love rock and roll first. And I'm doing good with my meditations and even on my own personality and my own self. You know, the word success finally popped in my head this morning when I woke up, and it really doesn't. Usually I say either I'm a failure or I'm not a failure, but that's still talking about failure. Today, the word success popped up in my mind, like maybe the failure isn't the problem, it's success. What if I'm more afraid of success than I am of failure? What if I've already failed and I'm okay with that? What if it's success I'm scared of? It's success that's new, success that's scary. Failure's not scary. I've been through that. Check my history. I've failed. So what? So fucking what? You just do nothing. But success, that could be what I'm really afraid of. That could be what's really scary. Funny thought, but doesn't make it wrong, right? And so there's that. And so I want to go on about Paul Gilbert. I said I probably would, and I want to. He was so cool with picking. Maybe he invented the drill for picking. Maybe someone's going to say, no, he didn't invent it. But as far as I'm concerned, he did. He took 3 picks and put it on a drill and made it go faster than any human picking hand can go. I think that's it's a gimmick and it's a toy and it's just so what, but it's cool. You know, it's a new thing. It's different than anyone else had done. Eddie Van Halen did it, but he didn't put picks on it. He just made the sound near the pickups. That's not the same. Paul Gilbert put picks on it and actually played the guitar with picks on the drill. I think that's kind of cool. What's wrong with that? Of course, it won't sound like alternate picking because it's only one stroke. You guys get that? It's only one direction. It would sound like infinite downstrokes or infinite upstrokes. Not infinite, but very fast downstrokes or very fast upstrokes. But it wouldn't have the alternate sound. That makes alternate picking sound different. So it's limiting in that way, even though it's fast as hell. technically speed wise, you need the alternate sound. In fact, I'm going to go on about that for a second, if that's okay. One of my ex mentors, he defriended me because I didn't know if my computer had a hard drive disk in it or not, and he thought I was either lying or stupid. And I didn't know, and I wasn't lying. And I did, but he said that the pickup, not the pick, but the pickups register downstrokes differently than upstrokes. It's a different, like, negative, positive polarity. Like electrons are negatively charged, protons are positively charged. He said downstrokes are positive charges to the pickup, and upstrokes are negative charges to the pickup. So when you do a down up, the pickup resonates that differently than a down down or an up up, or opposite than an up down. And that makes a different sound out of alternate picking than it does just infinitely fast if you could do it only with down or up. I don't understand that technique, that idea. Like, I can't prove that electronically. Maybe he could. He actually got a chance to go into Harvey Mudd. Do you know that? He was smart. Turned it down for bass playing. Wasn't interested. But that makes the sound different when you alternate pick versus only do one stroke or only do the other. So you get the advantage. If you like that sound, alternate picking is advantageous, not just for the speed and for the rhythmic consistency it seems to offer, but for the sound of it. So that's a cool thing. Thank you, Chris Bryan, for that idea, even though you no longer are my friend. Because I don't know whether my computer has a hard drive in it or not. I'm either lying about that or I'm dumb as a box of rocks. So there's that. I want to. If I ever have nothing to do and just blank time in my hands, and anybody ever really cares, I might write a book that's a reaction to The Case for Christ, and I could call mine The Case for Sin. I believe sin is a good thing. What's wrong with sin? It feels good. It gives you power. It gives you freedom, and it gives you. It just gives you a statement of your rights and a statement of your existence. If you don't sin, you're not doing anything. You're not living. In fact, without sin, none of us would be here. If Adam and Eve hadn't sinned, according to the Bible, blah, 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 yeah, right, sure. But if Adam and Eve hadn't sinned, we wouldn't be here. Other people would be, but we wouldn't be. So you owe your existence to sin, whoever you are. Because if Adam and Eve hadn't sinned, they'd still be in the fucking garden being little innocent, brainwashed imps under God's thumb, because nobody ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We had to eat that. That's the only way to get it. That's the only way to exist. In fact, it's the only way that you and I exist, because the world would have been different. It would have been a different story. You and I wouldn't even exist. You can thank your existence for sin. So, and you have a right to celebrate and claim and justify your existence, because you are the thing that's existing. Therefore, you have the right to say sin is a good thing. I might write a book about this someday. I might write a Christianity demolishing book. Haven't written it yet, haven't started it yet, but it's an idea in my mind, if I have one. and me personally, you better have sin for me to exist. I was not the product of marriage, hence adoption. I was either Jim Morrison. What my theory is, I was Jim Morrison's kid. He was not married, so there's sin already. And my adoptive dad, actually had one thought. I never told you guys this probably, but I'm gonna say it now. He had one thought about my natural parents. He told me once, a couple times, that my mom doesn't back up, because my mom says he couldn't have known that because she was always with him when he talked to the social worker, blah, blah, blah. And she didn't know about it, so he couldn't have. But she doesn't know that. But then again, she might be right, but I don't know either way. But either way, my dad did say his idea. My dad, not my mom did not back this up. My mom never said this. In fact, said he didn't know it either. He was just telling me shit. My dad said that my parents were high school kids. He told me this once or twice. They're from Camarillo High School. I think it's in Ventura, because I was born in Ventura. Is Camarillo High School in Ventura, California? I think something like that. Maybe there's this Camarillo High School in Ventura. So it's the same city. I was born in. I think I have to Google where Camarillo High School is. I'm not even sure. Maybe I should check that out. But they were high school kids, and they were both. My mom was 16 years old, and my dad was 18, and they were. Mom was underage. Dad was not, but he was in high school, and they had to give me up because they were just high school kids. That's all my dad ever. That's what my dad said a couple times. He said it a couple times, and that's all I've heard other than my own thought about being Jim Morrison's kid. Otherwise, I don't know nada. In fact, if my dad's right, then I really don't know nada because I'm barking up the wrong tree. If I'm right, my dad was just yanking my chain, which is highly likely. My dad could do that. He had a gift for that. He could make you think that the sky was red if he really wanted to bad enough. He was really good at, psychological manipulation and shit. That's why it took a lot for me to stand up to him as far as him hitting me, to not let him break me, It wasn't just taking the pain of him hitting me. It was not letting it break me, not letting it make me fall, helplessly into his domain of control, which I never did. And he just hit me harder for a while because I didn't. But finally, the hitting just became routine, and I began to expect it more than not to expect it. And then it wasn't. I didn't really. It ended up just being part of life, like breathing. I hate breathing sometimes. It takes so much energy, and it takes constant energy. You have to constantly breathe in and out. If you lived forever, you'd never get over that. What a hell. But it was kind of like that. It just became like breathing to me. Oh, my dad hit me today. Well, what's next? What's for lunch? Super salad. In fact, it's only recently that I got over the thought that he's not going to come up from the grave and hit me again. It's only recently that I'm really starting to psychologically get he's never going to hit me again. And he's been dead for 9 years, something like that. And he hasn't hit me for 40 years, something like that, maybe 42. So, mind is important. The mind controls a lot. And not just the conscious mind, not just your little thoughts, but what the mind really thinks and subconsciously, what's really underneath the iceberg, so to speak. Because a lot of times we have thoughts in our head that don't correspond to what we really believe. And that's what meditation tries to resolve, tries to unify those two and even correct it, even change it. But it's good to know what you really think rather than just what's going on in your conscious, tip of the iceberg mind, And meditation tries to deal with that. And so I don't know. I'm not saying I'm an expert meditator either, but it helps my playing. Is to do meditations and stuff. Playing isn't just physical practice. There's that, but it's also mental meditation to get it into your mind. So when you go to play, straight from your subconscious to your fingers, rather than just, oh my God, what are my fingers doing? What do I want to do? So, so I finally got through. I didn't get muted this time. Thank you. I may tear down Christianity in a book one of these days. It may be something I'm here to do. I applaud Jesus for one thing, that he was a successful guru. I do respect that if he existed, but whatever. What he did to convince everybody to follow him is actually impressive. I just don't believe him. I don't think he had the truth on his side. I don't believe what he was saying. I don't think he's God's son or anything else special. But the fact that he got so many people behind him is actually commendable. It's like he's like the Elvis of gurus. Or maybe the Elvis is the Jesus of rock and roll. I don't know, whichever you want to say. And he's not relevant anymore because his story is false, and he's dead. He lived 2,000 years ago. So did Buddha. No, Buddha was older than that. Buddha was maybe 5,000 years ago? Or was Buddha younger than that? I don't know. I have to check up my history. But these old gurus are great because of what they did, what they accomplished as far as their cause of getting people to listen to them and respect them and all that, but they were, but in Jesus's case, he was all totally off his tree, or what do they say? I don't know. I'm not really sure what that saying is. He wasn't right about what he was saying. The people, if anything, the people were right. He was claiming to be the Son of God when such a thing didn't exist. They had a right in their own way to kill him for blasphemy, because he was blaspheming. You know, right now, if I say I'm, you know, you don't, if you say you're God, if you're in the wrong time and period and place in history, they can kill you for that. And that happened to Jesus if he existed, and he just got what he deserved. Don't go around saying you're God in a place where that's not cool. When in Rome, do as the Romans. He wasn't doing as the Romans, so they killed him. Big fucking deal. But he was great. He got all these people to believe in him and know him. I respect that. I don't think he was right, and I don't worship him, but I respect him. Like my dad, you know. I'm not saying he was completely right in hitting me. He wasn't completely wrong either. You know, Jesus wasn't completely wrong either. His way of life was cool. Not that he was Son of God, but the way he lived was actually cool. I get a lot of good out of that. The way he wouldn't return evil for evil. That's good. Or true, or whatever. People would hit him and he wouldn't respond back with more hitting. That's actually cool. And the humility he had, other than saying he's the Son of God, but whatever. You know, not having to be rich, not having to be part of the society he was in, not having to have a claim of worldly authority or power, and yet still do him. Very much like what I like to do. I mean, I don't have a real job. I don't have a car. I own a home, but yeah, I do. But Jesus didn't need any of that either. He didn't need worldly acclaim to be who he was, and I respect that. There's truth in that. There's love in that. You know. And what other thing did he do that's cool? I'm going to do things in threes here. That's two. What was the third thing he did? He taught to not worry about those things, not to worry about, you know, what you're going to eat tomorrow and all that. He taught a very spiritual path, and for that I applaud him. And he was a great guru, but doesn't make him Son of God, and doesn't make what he said, doesn't make his whole doctrine true, doesn't make the Bible true, doesn't make Christianity true, and doesn't make him worshipful or worshipable, or doesn't make it right to worship him or true to worship him. Love you guys. Peace, love, and rock and roll.